You're huddled in a cave somewhere in what's now France. It's 20,000 years ago, the middle of the last glacial maximum. Outside, temperatures have dropped to minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Your breath forms clouds in the air and frost covers the cave walls. You're wearing every piece of animal hide your family owns, but it's not enough. Survival depends on one thing: the warmth of other human bodies pressed against yours. The Ice Age wasn't just one long winter. It lasted over 100,000 years, with the coldest period stretching from 26,000 to 19,000 years ago. During this time, ice sheets covered most of northern Europe and North America. Our ancestors faced temperatures that would kill a modern human in hours, yet somehow they didn't just survive, they thrived. What you're about to discover comes from archaeological sites across Europe and Asia, from fossilized remains, ancient hearths, and the layout of prehistoric shelters. The evidence reveals a sophisticated understanding of human thermodynamics that kept our species alive when the world tried to freeze us out. But before we continue, if you enjoy learning about our ancient ancestors and human survival, consider subscribing and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. The first thing our Ice Age ancestors understood was something we've largely forgotten. The human body is a furnace, but it's a furnace that needs fuel and insulation to work effectively. A single human produces about 100 watts of heat at rest, roughly the same as a bright light bulb, but that heat dissipates quickly in cold air. Put two people together, and you don't just double the heat. You create a thermal microenvironment. Archaeological evidence from sites like Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic shows us exactly how this worked. Researchers have found sleeping areas where multiple individuals clearly shared the same space, their bodies arranged in specific patterns. The charcoal remains and worn stones tell us these weren't random arrangements. These were calculated survival strategies. The most basic technique was the huddle. But this wasn't the casual cuddling you might imagine. Ice Age families developed precise formations based on body size, age, and heat production. Adults, who generated the most body heat, formed the outer ring. Children and elderly individuals who lost heat faster stayed in the center. Pregnant women, whose metabolisms ran higher, often served as human furnaces for the group. The positioning was strategic. People slept with the largest person's back against the cave wall, creating a heat barrier. The next person would press their chest against that person's back, and so on. Limbs intertwined not for affection, but for maximum skin contact. Every inch of exposed flesh was covered by another person's body. But the huddle was just the beginning. Archaeological analysis of Ice Age sleeping areas reveals they understood something modern science calls the thermal envelope. By sharing body heat in enclosed spaces, they could raise the temperature by 15 to 20 degrees. That difference could mean survival or death when outside temperatures reached lethal levels. The clothing worked in conjunction with body sharing. Researchers examining preserved leather and fur from Ice Age sites found that our ancestors developed layered systems designed specifically for group warmth. The innermost layer was soft fur, worn against the skin. The outer layer was tougher hide, designed to trap air heated by multiple bodies. When families shared sleeping spaces, they often wore complementary clothing. One person might wear a large fur cloak designed to cover multiple people. Others wore smaller pieces that could be adjusted to fill gaps in the group's thermal envelope. It was a coordinated system where individual comfort mattered less than collective survival. The evidence shows they even coordinated their sleep cycles for warmth. In the coldest months, families would designate heat shifts. While most of the group slept, one or two people stayed awake, moving around to generate heat and tending small fires. Every few hours, they'd switch positions, with the coldest people moving to the center of the huddle and the warmest taking the outside positions. Sites across Ice Age Europe show similar patterns. In Spain, at the Cova del Parpalló, researchers found sleeping areas where up to 12 people shared the same space. The wear patterns on the cave floor suggest they rotated positions throughout the night, ensuring no one stayed on the cold outer edge too long. The social implications were profound. Privacy, as we understand it, didn't exist during the coldest months. Families shared not just warmth, but every bodily function. Archaeological evidence suggests communal sleeping lasted roughly 4 to 5 months each year, during the harshest weather. The rest of the year, families had more individual sleeping arrangements. This created social bonds that went beyond normal family relationships. Children grew up literally pressed against aunts, uncles, grandparents, and family friends. The physical intimacy created emotional intimacy. Some researchers argue this communal sleeping helped develop the complex social cooperation that allowed humans to dominate other species. The breath sharing was perhaps the most intimate survival technique. In the deepest cold, families would sleep face to face, actually breathing each other's exhaled air. This served two purposes. The warm, moist air prevented lung damage from extremely dry, cold air. and it created a pocket of heated air around the face and neck, where heat loss is typically highest. Archaeological sites show evidence of what researchers call breathing caves, small enclosed spaces within larger shelters where 2 to 4 people would sleep with their faces close together. Charcoal. Analysis suggests these areas stayed significantly warmer than the surrounding space, sometimes by as much as 25 degrees. The techniques extended beyond just sleeping. During the day, when families had to leave shelters to hunt or gather, they developed walking formations designed to share body heat. Children and elderly members walked in the center of the group, protected from wind by the larger adults. When resting, they immediately formed heat-sharing huddles, even for short breaks. Archaeological evidence from Siberian sites shows our ancestors understood wind dynamics and used their bodies as windbreaks for each other. The person with the heaviest build would face into the wind, creating a calm pocket for smaller family members. They'd rotate this position to prevent any one person from becoming dangerously cold. The cooking arrangements reflected the same principles. Families cooked together not just for efficiency, but for warmth. Large communal fires heated more people with less fuel. The smoke from these fires was directed through sleeping areas using stone channels, creating primitive central heating systems. Evidence from sites like Mezhrich in Ukraine shows they built their shelters specifically to maximize shared body heat. The structures were small, forcing people together, with low ceilings to trap warm air. The entrances had multiple barriers to prevent heat loss, and sleeping areas were positioned as far as possible from any openings. Some of the most fascinating evidence comes from what didn't survive: individual bedding. In Ice Age sites, researchers find communal sleeping areas, but rarely evidence of individual blankets or personal sleeping spaces. Everything was designed for group warmth. Personal comfort was sacrificed for collective survival. The breath warming extended to shared food consumption. Families would eat heated food together, using the warm food to raise their core body temperatures before sleeping. They'd drink warm liquids from shared containers, passing them around to ensure everyone benefited from the heat. Even the act of chewing together generated jaw heat that could be shared through close contact. Archaeological analysis reveals they understood the concept of thermal mass, using heated stones from the fire to warm sleeping areas, but they also used their own bodies as thermal mass, with the largest individuals serving as heat reservoirs for the smaller ones. Children would literally sleep on top of adults, using the adult's body as a heated mattress. The evidence shows they developed techniques for dealing with the inevitable problems of communal sleeping. Ventilation systems prevented carbon dioxide buildup when many people shared small spaces. Strategic positioning prevented the strongest individuals from accidentally crushing smaller ones during sleep. They even developed ways to manage personal hygiene in close quarters. Sites across Europe show evidence of what researchers call heat hierarchies, social systems that determined who got the warmest sleeping positions. Generally, pregnant women and young children got priority for the center positions, but the systems were flexible, adjusting based on who was sick, injured, or had been exposed to cold during the day. The shared warmth techniques weren't limited to families. Archaeological evidence suggests that during the coldest periods, entire communities would share heating resources. Multiple families would combine their body heat in large communal shelters, creating village-wide survival strategies. Evidence from mammoth bone shelters in Eastern Europe shows structures designed for dozens of people to share warmth. These weren't just gathering places, but survival shelters where entire communities would huddle together during the worst weather. The social cooperation required for this level of intimacy helped develop the complex societies that followed. The breathing techniques they developed were remarkably sophisticated. By breathing in rhythm, sleeping families could create warm air pockets that circulated around the group. Some evidence suggests they even developed coordinated breathing patterns, with people taking turns breathing deeply to warm the shared air. Archaeological analysis of Ice Age sites reveals they understood the danger of overheating in shared sleeping arrangements. Ventilation holes and adjustable coverings allowed them to regulate temperature as conditions changed throughout the night. Too much heat could be as dangerous as too little, leading to dehydration and exhaustion. The body heat sharing created its own challenges: skin conditions from constant contact, respiratory infections from shared breathing, and social tensions from lack of privacy. But archaeological evidence suggests they developed solutions for all of these problems, from medicinal plant use to social protocols for managing conflicts in tight spaces. The evidence shows that families developed specific roles for heat sharing. Children as young as 5 or 6 had responsibilities for maintaining group warmth, whether through tending fires, adjusting clothing, or taking specific positions in the sleeping arrangement. Everyone contributed to collective survival. The transition between seasons required careful planning. As weather warmed, families gradually reduced their communal sleeping, but they maintained the techniques for sudden cold snaps. Archaeological sites show evidence of flexible shelter arrangements that could quickly accommodate either individual or group sleeping based on conditions. The shared warmth strategies extended to dealing with illness and injury. Sick individuals were kept in the center of huddles, using the warmth of healthy bodies to fight infection. The close contact also meant that healing could be monitored constantly, with family members detecting changes in breathing, temperature, or movement. Regional variations in these techniques emerged across Ice Age Europe and Asia. Scandinavian sites show evidence of more structured communal arrangements, with designated sleeping orders based on clan hierarchy. Mediterranean sites reveal more flexible systems that adjusted based on daily conditions rather than strict social rules. The Gravettian culture, spanning from France to Russia between 28,000 and 22,000 years ago, left behind the most detailed evidence of sophisticated heat-sharing strategies. At sites like Předmostí in the Czech Republic, archaeologists found sleeping areas designed for up to 30 people. The arrangement wasn't random. Analysis of bone wear patterns and tool distribution suggests specific individuals had designated positions that maximized heat distribution. These larger communal sleeping arrangements required complex social negotiations. Evidence suggests they developed protocols for everything from who could enter the sleeping area when to how disputes were settled without disturbing the group's warmth. Stone carvings from the period may actually represent these social agreements, carved reminders of the rules that kept everyone alive. The evidence from Kostenki, a series of sites along the Don River in Russia, reveals they understood microclimates within their shelters. Different sleeping areas were designed for different weather conditions. During moderate cold, families might sleep in smaller groups. As temperatures dropped, they'd move to progressively larger communal areas, culminating in huge shared spaces for the worst storms. Archaeological analysis shows they developed a sophisticated understanding of body heat zones. The human torso generates the most heat, so they positioned the largest adults to create heat corridors through the sleeping area. Arms and legs, which lose heat quickly, were carefully positioned inside these warm zones. Heads, which lose tremendous amounts of heat, were often covered by other people's bodies or shared clothing. The evidence suggests they understood the heat production differences between men and women. Generally, men produce more body heat due to larger muscle mass, so they often took outside positions in sleeping arrangements. Women, who retain heat better due to different fat distribution, often served as heat stabilizers in the center of groups, but these roles could shift based on individual needs and circumstances. Pregnancy created special heat-sharing protocols. Pregnant women not only produced more heat themselves, but required more warmth for the developing child. Archaeological sites show evidence of special sleeping alcoves designed specifically for pregnant women, positioned to receive heat from multiple sources while maintaining easy access for movement and comfort. The sharing of breath wasn't just about warmth, it was about survival in multiple ways. The moisture in exhaled breath prevented the severe dehydration that could occur in extremely dry, cold air. By breathing each other's exhaled air, families maintained humidity levels that prevented dangerous fluid loss through respiration. Sites like Gunnersdorf in Germany show evidence that they understood the heating properties of different foods. Families would consume fatty, high-calorie meals before communal sleeping, literally using food as fuel for shared body heat. The timing of these meals was coordinated so that peak digestion heat occurred during the coldest part of the night. The archaeological record reveals they developed techniques for maintaining body heat during necessary activities like childbirth. Evidence suggests that during labor, multiple women would surround the birthing mother, using their combined body heat to keep both mother and newborn warm in conditions that could otherwise be fatal. Children born during the Ice Age grew up with an intimate understanding of thermal dynamics that modern humans have lost. By age 2 or 3, they understood their role in family heat generation. Archaeological evidence suggests children were taught specific positions and breathing techniques that maximized their contribution to group warmth. The evidence from Aubry-Patau in France shows they developed heat-sharing techniques for the deceased as well. Bodies were often kept warm for extended periods after death, possibly both for social reasons and to prevent the rapid heat loss that would affect the entire group. This practice may have been the origin of some human burial customs. Regional climate variations led to different heat-sharing specializations. Groups in the most extreme northern climates developed techniques for sharing body heat while moving, creating mobile warmth systems for hunting expeditions. Southern groups focused on more stationary arrangements, but developed ways to quickly form heat-sharing formations when weather suddenly changed. The mammoth hunters of Eastern Europe created some of the most sophisticated shared heating systems. Evidence from sites like Mezherich shows they understood how to use mammoth bone structures to channel and concentrate shared body heat. These weren't just shelters. They were thermal engineering projects that could keep dozens of people warm, using only body heat and minimal fire. Archaeological analysis reveals they developed methods for sharing heat during food processing activities. Communal food preparation wasn't just efficient, it was a way to stay warm while working. Groups would huddle together while preparing hides, making tools, or processing meat, using shared body heat to keep their hands functional in extreme cold. The evidence suggests they understood the relationship between physical activity and heat production for the group. Individuals would take turns performing heat-generating activities like dancing, stretching, or calisthenics, not just for personal warmth, but to raise the overall temperature for everyone sharing the space. Sites across Ice Age Europe show evidence of what researchers call heat communication, systems for signaling when individuals were becoming dangerously cold. These might have been specific words, gestures, or even physical cues like shivering patterns that alerted the group to adjust. They're heat-sharing arrangements. The sophistication of these techniques extended to understanding different types of cold exposure. Archaeological evidence suggests they had specific protocols for wet cold versus dry cold, for sudden temperature drops versus gradual cooling, and for different wind conditions. Each situation required different heat-sharing strategies. Evidence from sites like Pavlov in the Czech Republic shows they developed specialized clothing that worked in conjunction with body heat sharing. Garments had overlapping sections designed to be shared between multiple people, creating continuous thermal barriers that wrapped around entire families or groups. The breathing techniques weren't just about sharing warm air, they were about creating optimal air composition for survival. By breathing together in enclosed spaces, they could maintain higher oxygen levels and prevent the buildup of toxic gases that could be fatal in tightly sealed shelters. Archaeological analysis reveals they understood the thermal properties of different sleeping surfaces. Stone surfaces were avoided despite being flat because they conducted heat away from the body. Instead, they created sleeping areas on organic materials that provided insulation while still allowing for the close contact necessary for heat sharing. The evidence shows they developed techniques for maintaining shared body heat during necessary separations. When individuals had to leave the group for hunting or gathering, the remaining people would adjust their positions to compensate for the lost heat source. When the person returned, there were specific protocols for reintegrating them into the warm huddle without disrupting everyone else's sleep. Sites across Ice Age Europe reveal evidence of what researchers call thermal literacy, the ability to read and respond to subtle changes in group body temperature. Families developed sensitivity to the thermal state of each member, detecting early signs of hypothermia or overheating before they became dangerous. The Magdalenian culture, which followed the Gravettian period from about 17,000 to 12,000 years ago, refined these techniques even further. Evidence from sites like Lascaux and Altamira suggests they developed artistic and cultural expressions specifically related to heat sharing. Cave paintings may have depicted not just hunting scenes, but the social arrangements necessary for survival. Archaeological evidence from this later period shows they created more permanent installations for heat sharing, stone-lined sleeping, areas with carefully calculated dimensions, positioned to maximize both shared body heat and air circulation. These weren't temporary survival measures. They were architectural solutions that could be used season after season. The evidence suggests they developed mathematical understanding of heat distribution. Sleeping arrangements followed specific ratios based on the number of people, their sizes, and the external temperature. Archaeological sites show consistent patterns that suggest this knowledge was passed down through generations as precise survival formulas. Sites like La Madeleine in France reveal they created backup heat-sharing systems. Multiple sleeping areas of different sizes allowed groups to adjust their arrangements based on weather conditions and group composition. If the main sleeping area became compromised, they had alternative arrangements already prepared. The social complexity of these arrangements extended to intergroup relationships. Archaeological evidence suggests that during the worst weather, normally competing groups would share heat-sharing resources. Territorial disputes were temporarily set aside when survival required cooperation between different families or clans. Evidence from Cavemen in France shows they developed techniques for heat sharing during migration. Portable arrangements allowed groups to maintain their survival strategies while moving to new locations. The knowledge of how to quickly establish heat-sharing formations in new environments was crucial for survival during seasonal movements. The transition out of the Ice Age required gradual adaptation of these techniques. Archaeological sites from the warming period show slowly evolving sleeping arrangements, with families maintaining some communal warmth strategies while gradually developing more individual spaces. This transition period lasted thousands of years, suggesting these heat-sharing behaviors had become deeply ingrained in human culture. Modern survival experts studying Ice Age techniques have found that properly executed body heat sharing can keep people alive in conditions that would otherwise be fatal. The difference between survival and death often came down to these intimate cooperation strategies that required people to overcome natural privacy instincts in favor of collective survival. The psychological adaptation required for effective heat sharing may have contributed to other human developments. The ability to overcome personal discomfort for group benefit, the development of complex social hierarchies based on survival needs, and the coordination required for group activities all emerged from these fundamental survival practices. Archaeological. Evidence suggests that the Ice Age heat-sharing techniques created social bonds that lasted beyond the survival situation. Groups that successfully shared body heat during the coldest months maintained stronger cooperation during hunting, food sharing, and territorial defense. The intimacy required for survival created trust that enhanced all other group activities. The neurological impacts of prolonged body contact during Ice Age sleeping arrangements may have influenced human brain development. The constant physical contact stimulated oxytocin production, which enhanced social bonding and cooperative behavior. These chemical changes in the brain may have contributed to the development of more complex social structures. Evidence from multiple sites suggests they developed specialized roles for heat sharing that went beyond basic survival. Some individuals became experts in reading thermal conditions, predicting weather changes, and organizing optimal sleeping arrangements. These thermal specialists may have been among the first human occupational specializations. The Ice Age. Body heat sharing techniques represent one of humanity's earliest forms of complex social cooperation. These weren't just survival strategies, they were the foundation for the social bonds that allowed humans to develop agriculture, permanent settlements, and eventually civilization itself. The intimacy required to survive the Ice Age created social structures that persisted long after the ice melted. The cooperation, selflessness, and coordination necessary for group survival became part of human culture. We survived the coldest period in recent planetary history not through individual strength, but through our willingness to literally warm each other. Understanding these techniques isn't just historical curiosity. As climate change creates new survival challenges, the Ice Age strategies our ancestors developed remind us that human cooperation and intimacy might be our greatest tools for survival. And when the world becomes hostile, we have each other's warmth. The legacy of Ice Age body heat sharing lives on in human behavior today. Our instinct to comfort others through physical contact, our need for community during difficult times, and our ability to sacrifice personal comfort for group benefit all trace back to those frozen caves where survival depended on the willingness to share the most basic human resource, warmth.